does not enjoy a good dose of caffeine in the morning? I know I sure do. And for a large portion of the Earth's population, that drink of choice is coffee. I've been drinking coffee for a good portion of my adult life, but I only recently started looking into how it's actually grown and produced. And I hope by the end of my speech, you guys will know a little bit more about how coffee is grown, harvested, and roasted for consumption. So that's what I'm going to take you through today, guys, is the coffee cycle, starting from a little seed, going to a big tree, and then ending up with more seeds. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did looking into it. It's grown worldwide using the same methods with different results. Coffee is grown from seed to tree in a process that starts in the nursery and ends in the farm. You need to start with germinating coffee seeds, which is something I actually didn't know, but basically you lay them all out in sand, and then you throw wet burlap sacks over them is a traditional way. A more modern way would be just to throw them in moist plastic bags, just like some spongy plastic material. After the seeds are germinated, they live in the nursery for about a year in like big planter beds, and then they're moved to the farm. And then coffee cherries, when coffee's ripe, it takes about 3 to 4 years after you plant a coffee tree in the farm, so about 5 years total to get your first crop. And coffee cherries I thought were really, really cool looking. They actually look like little bright red fruit, which is something I did not know entirely. So that's what I'm talking about, guys, which is something I found really interesting. So those are ripe coffee cherries right there. And coffee grows best around the equator. And according to the International Coffee Organization, coffee grows best in their subtropical regions at high altitudes of 16 to 24 degrees latitude. Rainy and dry seasons must be well defined, and altitude must be between 1,800 and 3,600 feet. You can also grow it obviously more near the equator, anywhere from sea level to 7,000 feet. And the closer you are to the equator, the earlier in the summer you can crop it. So if you're in a really nice coffee growing climate, you can actually get 2 crops a year, which is quite nice. And the location and the elevation where coffee is grown affects the taste. For example, according to the National Coffee Association, USA, Mexican coffee tends to have a pronounced sharpness. It is an excellent bean for dark roast and often used in blend. Compared to something like Vietnamese coffee, which is quite a bit lighter and a lot less acidic, which is, I know, it's good for my stomach at the very least. So coffee can be broken up into 3 different regions, the Americas, Africa, and Asia. American coffee tends to be pretty standard what we think of when we think of coffee. African coffee tends to be a lot fruitier, but also a lot more acidic. And then Asian coffee is a lot lighter and a lot less acidic. After you've grown the coffee, we've got the lovely step of harvesting it. And there's 2 ways to do it. They're called machine picking and selectively picking. Machine picking coffee is something I found humorous. Actually involves basically picking up a big machine to the tree itself and just shaking the crud out of it until all of the coffee cherries fall off of it. This method doesn't get you the best crop because you can't take everything when it's ripe compared to selectively picking, which takes a lot more manpower because you need to have people rotate through your crop every couple of days and actually pick the right cherries, but you will get a better crop from doing that. Either way, after you've picked them, you need to basically begin to process the coffee. There are 2 ways of doing this. The first one is the older and less commonly used, which is dry processing. And basically you lay the coffee cherries, the whole cherries that I just have up here, out on beds of sand again and turn them about every couple hours for about 4 weeks until the whole thing doesn't rot. So it's not used so much because things do have a tendency to rot if you do it that way, compared to the wet method where you actually pick the coffee and then you take most of the cherry out of the bean, because coffee beans are just a little bean inside the cherry, and you basically remove the pulp before you dry it. And here's a old school process of doing that. As you can see, coffee cherries go through this with a bunch of things to basically depulp them. Get your coffee out there. After you've done that in the wet method, the coffee beans actually sit around for about a day to help the rest of the excess material drain off of them. And then you dry them similar to dry method, but you only have to do it for about 2 weeks. After you've got coffee that's dried, and you basically need to finish milling it or taking the excess plant material off of the actual bean that you want to sell. And today's machines remove this husk from dry coffee beans or dry cherries. You can do it either with the wet or the dry process the same way. The machines can be really, really simple or really complex, and I'm quoting from the coffee review here that says, the machines that do this range from simple millstones in Yemen to sophisticated machines that gently whack at the coffee. I thought that was kind of amusing. And And a modern coffee holder design I found was a large system of shaking trays and belts. Either way, after you've got your coffee, bag it up in burlap sacks again, and you ship it all over the world. Most of today's coffee is exported. It takes about 60 or 70% of the world's coffee is actually exported. And that leads to, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, about 104.8 million bags of coffee are exported a year, which I was quite surprised at how much it was. Lastly, and I'll make this point a bit quicker, coffee, after you get it where you need to be, the last step for consumption is roasting it. It's the process of heating it up between 400 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The coffee turns from green to yellow. There's an audible crack, and then it turns brown. If you go even browner, you get another crack, which makes it even darker, and that's where you get your dark roast. Basically, the darker your coffee is, the less acidic it will be. So if you have low quality coffee, you want to roast the heck out of it, because it'll make it taste less acidic to your stomach. But you will lose the organic compound, which means you lose some of the, or I guess, origin flavor of where the coffee comes from. And coffee starts life as a tiny seed and eventually grows to a 10-foot tree. After coffee is ripened, it needs to be harvested and prepared for roasting, which is the last step in preparing it for human consumption. I hope you learned a little bit more about making that cup of coffee that so many of us enjoy in the morning, and think when you drink your next cup, you're enjoying the fruit of many labors and truly an international beverage. Thank you.